So we touched on Rona, lucky Rona, in the last session, but in this session, she's getting all the attention. Journalist, broadcaster, dating expert, and author of the brilliantly titled The Curious History of Dating, From Jane Austen to Tinder. Nikki Hodgson will tell us about love, dating, pleasure in a time of COVID. I mean, it's got to be the shortest session. No one's dating. No one's having sex.
Oh, they are, though. They actually are. And what's so fascinating is, obviously, as I learned when I was writing my book, people always have done, no matter how difficult the circumstances. So it doesn't matter whether it's been 2 world wars, local wars, times of plague, other kinds of illnesses. People always find a way despite the circumstances. And, you know, actually dating is the ultimate sign of optimism and hope for the future. Yeah. So, you know, you've got to love people that are dating.
Are they doing it safely? Are we legally, you know, it's all been changed with all these rules and blah, blah, blah. Are we legally allowed to do the deed, to make sweet love?
Yeah, so sex itself has not been outlawed. I think it's really important to say that. What has been outlawed in some parts of the country, Scotland, for example, is meeting up with other people inside their or your household. That doesn't mean, however, that you can't have sex outside with them or in another location. So it's really a case of getting round the law. You don't need to worry about breaking it. And it's also a matter for your own conscience and what you're comfortable with.
Yeah. Yeah. How can you, did you see, I don't know who this came from. It must have been some government department, a little kind of breakdown of what you could and couldn't do sexually. And
yes.
Like you couldn't face, and you were supposed to wear masks and blah, blah. What did you think of that?
Yeah, well, I think this actually came from the American government. I don't think it came from the UK government. They've been very, very quiet about all of this. You can't imagine Jacob Rees-Mogg getting on his soapbox, can you, and telling people what they can and can't do in the bedroom. Well, I can't anyway.
Well, you've just ruined. Thank you. Thank you for that image.
Let's move away from him. Move away. Yeah, I mean, there is some technical advice about what it is best to do and what it is best not to do. So obviously COVID isn't an STI, but it can be transmitted kind of alongside COVID if you're having sex with somebody. They have found COVID particles in feces and semen. So this means technically you probably should stay away from rimming and from blowjobs without condom if you want to be super, 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 super safe and take all the government advice.
How can we even, before we get to the stage where we're not with Jacob Rees-Mogg on that couch, I've got that House of Commons image now of him just lying back casually as I straddle. I don't know what I would do. How are we dating? How are people even meeting anyone to have the sex with, safe sex with?
Of course. Well, people are obviously still using dating apps. In fact, the Match Group reported a 15% upturn in users from March. Yeah, there was a downturn in April, which is when lots of the world was locked down, but there has been a gradual increase of users because obviously people have been locked inside with little to do. And what have they got? They've got their phones. So they have actually been on dating apps, liking, swiping, messaging, having phone sex, having video sex. You know, people are still going at it. They're just using technology. Thank God we have technology to its best advantage point. And obviously tech makes it safe. You can't catch COVID through a screen, at least not at the minute anyway. So
yeah. Give Rona a month, she'll find a way. So, you know, in your book, when we talk about, and there's been dating in, you know, like at times of cholera, or, you know, sex and dating and world wars and blah, blah, blah. Has there been a kind of mental shift for people coming out of a crisis time in terms of how they deal with sex?
Well, yeah, I mean, we always see an upturn in sex. If people are really troubled, people actually have more sex. And if people are celebrating the end of something, they have more sex. So, you know, in the Second World War, when they couldn't have sex inside, they used to favour the wall job. And that was a term that was derived from that time. Somebody actually decided to call it the wall job. So people just literally, you know, got on it in alleys. And several couples would take one alley as well. You always hear those stories about people having sex in the tube, you know, during a bomb raid, because, you know, well, if I'm going down, I might as well go down having an orgasm. So they are just urban myths. These things are actually true. So, you know, people have made the most of a bad time by having sex. And, you know, what's going to get you through better than having pleasure with somebody else if everything else is going tits up, so to speak?
Well, that's the worst. That's one of the worst things as well, hasn't it? That not even sex, but just not hugging people, and the oxytocin. Is it oxytocin?
Oxytocin, absolutely. So oxytocin, oxytocin.
That's a love hormone.
Yeah, oxytocin's released when you touch somebody, vasopressin as well as another one which helps calm you as well as bond you. And dopamine is the chemical we get released when we're in anticipation of someone. So probably lots of us have had quite a lot of dopamine when we've been swiping online and looking at people, maybe doing some mutual masturbation over the webcam. But yeah, oxytocin has been in short supply. So that makes me a little bit sad. But you can still do things like you can still handhold with a new date, even if you haven't met them before. Just make sure you wash your hands. And in terms of having sex with somebody new, you know, one of the things you could do, you can't get a test obviously to sort of certify that you're okay to have sex with somebody, but if you wanted to, you could actually self-isolate for 14 days, and then that would make sure that you didn't have symptoms. So it's a bit of a drastic measure, but if you're really into somebody, well, what else are you going to do?
Do we have to wear a mask?
Wearing mask is a really good tip. Wearing mask definitely helps, actually. Keeping your heads away from each other, so 69ing has been recommended. If you use the condom on a penis, of course. Something that I recommend is some tight little knickers on the face as a mask. And this is a trick that I used to use when I was a dominatrix, and it was really to kind of punish people that were talking too much or were irritating me and that I didn't really want to look at anymore. So I would just take my knickers off, put it over their head, job done. They were now quiet for a few moments while I thought about what I was going to do next to them. But
didn't expect that, Nikki. If it's Rees-Mogg or it's knickers on your okay, I'm fine. I'm back in the room.
But if you have a tight pair of knickers, they've got to be tight, obviously, because that would, you know, that's going to protect the face area. But you'd be surprised, even a thong fits quite well as a triangle over this area. So at least it's a little bit more sexy than wearing your face mask.
It's so Lovehoney, our lovely Lovehoney, conducted a lockdown survey about how lockdown has affected couples and single people. What did it find?
So it found that actually people had been turning to sex to deal with their stress. I think it's about 52% of them were having more adventurous sex, which I think is really fascinating.
Yeah.
So, you know, obviously people have been locked in and they've been bored. And what does boredom create? Well, it creates invention. So, you know, there's something to be said for that. And also lots of people have been managing childcare and really difficult job situations and caring for other people. But then other people had more time on their hands. And again, what's the best thing to fill your extra time with? Sex is what I would say. It certainly cheers you up.
Yeah, if people are having like FaceTime sex or, you know, online sex with someone they don't know, how do they protect themselves in terms of privacy? Or, I mean, does that feel scary?
Yeah, so I mean, the main thing to do is obviously don't use a work computer. You'd be amazed how many people decide to decide to go live on a work computer, because often they use it for everything, so they don't really think about what they're doing. So there's that. Other things like make sure, you know, that two-step verification that we always skip because we're always too bored to do it. Actually do it, because it secures all your accounts. There are apps like Signal that you can use that are better than WhatsApp for messaging, like instant messaging. So it's like the new version of Snapchat if you want to use it that way. So you can set the messages to disappear after a second. So if you're sexting, sending sexy selfies, that's actually a really good way of doing it. So yeah. And the other thing, of course, is don't send a picture of your head and your body to someone that you don't know. Do one or the other, because then you can always excuse the other body part.
Yeah. Say it was Jacob Rees-Mogg, it had nothing to do with me. Also, the survey found, I thought this was great, 42% of respondents are using sex toys more frequently.
Yes, and of course, sex toys are absolutely fantastic right now because, you know, they give you, if you're not with a partner, then obviously you can use them separately and use tech to communicate what you're doing. You could talk on the phone and tell somebody, right, I want you to put the vibrator here, there, wherever. So you can kind of play a game with it. You know, the really important thing to do is to clean your sex toys really well. And if you're starting with a new partner, then it actually is a really nice idea to buy them a brand new sex toy altogether. Then they know it's completely clean, completely safe. And it's a beautiful gift to give someone.
So how do you clean them properly then? Give us that ultimate advice.
You can just do it with actually hot water and soap. That actually gets rid of the majority of the bacteria. And, you know, increasingly they're made of body safe materials, like things like silicone, which are washable. You can also put your sex toys in the dishwasher. You do need to check the box first, but that actually is very standard practice. And obviously it gets to a really high temperature and you don't have to worry about leaving them out on the side. I used to, when I was a dominatrix, hand wash all my dildos and then like do a row of them on the sink. But then I would forget that my housemate would come home and then they'd all just be like stood up there, stood to attention. So don't do that.
Don't do that. How long were you a dominatrix for?
On and off about 5 years. I only ever did it part-time, so it was only a couple of hours a week. and it was always around my writing and my interning.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a nice little earner, and it gave me a wealth of knowledge, which I put to very good use since.
What's your most memorable moment from that time?
Oh my gosh, there are so many, loads that I can't repeat actually, because it might freak some people out. But probably one of the best was a client that had a fantasy for being eaten. Like he wanted to imagine that someone might eat him because they loved him so much. So he would ask for himself to be kind of tied and trussed up like a spring lamb, and then have mint sauce put on him. Extremely strange. But no fantasy's too strange. That was the point. It was a safe fantasy, and it was his thing, so why wouldn't I honour it? That's kind of what I always say. I know it sounds peculiar, but wasn't doing anybody any harm.
Yeah. Are you a vegan?
No, I'm not. I wish I was. I should be one.
So sex toys, I hear you've had a special delivery.
I have. I'm really excited because I was worried that somebody else had poached them earlier, but they have actually arrived now. Do you want me to share with you what I've got?
Yes, please.
Okay, wonderful. So I don't know where to start first. I've got so many options. Right. Shall I, I haven't unboxed them yet. Do you want me to unbox them?
Do it.
Okay,
this is like
really
joining in your Christmas.
This is like proper Christmas. So this is the app-controlled Love Egg.
Okay, cool.
Oh my God, this is where I need long nails to get into the Excel. Sorry guys, it's going to be
so anyone could control that then, not necessarily you?
Yeah, that's the whole point. It's even better to give the app give the app control to somebody else, because then they can kind of play games with you, torture you, take as long as they want, titillate you, etc., etc. I think we've just ripped this open, baby. I'm going to go for it.
What if someone put a love egg, so you had a love egg vibrator up you, and then they went to the pub and they forgot that they'd kind of switched you on?
Well, I guess then you'd have to take it out, wouldn't you? Unless you want to have the mother of all evenings. Because it would go on for a very long time. I don't even know if it's got a little power in it. Let's see. Yeah, so this is wonderful. It's like, you can see, it's like it's really, it's not large. It's like extremely smooth. Like it feels beautiful. It's like really, really silky.
I love that colour.
Yeah, the colour's gorgeous. And it's elegant. Like, I mean, is it a kitchen utensil? Is it a sex toy?
It's objet d'art, isn't it?
Exactly. You can leave it out and no one's going to worry about it. But yeah, so I mean,
that's so cool. Show me
nice.
Quickly. Oh, it's all about knickers with you. That's your theme. So you've got a Desire luxury app controlled rechargeable knicker vibrator.
Yes, I have. I'm just going to rip into it because I will be using it. So
I know you will.
We don't need to worry about the boxing.
No.
Try to do it elegantly, but there's no point where lust is involved. Get on with it. Also, they come in these really nice little pouches.
Oh,
so again, like just another. And like for white clean, it's like another easy thing that you can kind of keep hold of. Where is it? Let's have a look. Oh, here it is.
A knicker vibrator.
A knicker vibrator. So you don't need anybody for this. It's purely some extreme self-love orgasm. And look at this. It's the perfect shape. Again, it's that great colour. It's that lovely, lovely texture. And that will literally just sit. You can see where that sits. It's really, really straightforward to use. Again, you've got like a discreet little button here to press to open it. And then it's actually got a nice little ridge here. You can't really see, but that just fits beautifully inside. It's going to stimulate the whole area. So, super simple, chic looking, and just a brilliant night in for yourself.
And total hands-free. So you can do whatever else you want to do.
Exactly. So puppet shows.
I know you love a puppet show. Whatever you want to do. Give me, I've got some questions for you. Give me, finally, right now, I guess, your 3 top tips on dating successfully during this crazy time, unprecedented time that we're in.
Right, okay, so the main things that I would say is, just because we're in the middle of a pandemic, don't go for people that you wouldn't have gone for before. You're not desperate, and eventually you're going to spend a substantial amount of time, if it goes well, with this person, and you need to still make a good choice. So if somebody is moving really fast and putting pressure on you to kind of see you and hang out with you, and maybe even thinking about spending a second lockdown with you, perish the thought if we get to one, you don't have to go at that pace. Take your time, because sometimes people just panic in these kinds of situations and think, I've got to find myself somebody, I'm going to go for the next person that's really lovely to me. So we don't want you to be victim to that person. So be careful about the timing. Go as slow as you would normally is my first tip. Second tip, don't lose your life to swiping, even though your boss isn't kind of watching what you're doing at your desk all the time anymore, because you're working from home, presumably. Instead, only swipe between 5 and 9 times a day, or at least until you've worked through those options. That is actually science from Dr. Helen Fisher, who's the world's leading anthropologist on dating, and she works for Match.com. That's her advice. And she says that's because past 5 to 9 swipes, we get cognitive overload and we make poorer decisions for ourselves. So you think your taste is improving or you're being more selective. It's
That's
not.
mad.
Yeah, it's really, really fascinating. The brain isn't meant to process loads and loads and loads of options. And that's what modern dating tries to sell us, but it's not actually true. So, be selective. It's quality over quantity.
I love this. I'm going to make you take me dating. Advise me. Can I ask you some questions, please?
Please do.
Let's see what we've got here. Okay. How common, this is some of an anonymous attendee, how common would you say it's for women to have a lower frequency sex drive? There's a lot of talk, which makes it seem like everyone's being a bunny all the time.
Gosh, that's quite a complex question to answer. I think what's fair to say is that everybody of any gender, of any age, can have a completely different sex drive to a similar person. So, there are obviously there are hormonal things that come into play during the course of your lifetime that will affect your sex drive, and there'll be other health issues, mental health issues, like depending on your stress factors. There are all these kinds of things that can affect your personal sex drive, but your sex drive is personal to you, but it's not static, so it's going to change over the course of your lifetime. So I'm kind of like getting around the question in a way, but what I'm trying to say is that it's really difficult to say there's X amount of sex that you should want a day and anything below that is failing. It doesn't work like that. The amount of sex that's right is the amount of sex where you feel satisfied for you. And if that's once a month, then that's once a month, and that's fine.
And I guess if it's really vacillating or fluctuating so much that you're not happy with that, then you explore that. But it's
completely
you're the level that you go.
You're the parameter, and it's got to be about your happiness. That's the issue. It's not really to do with the amount.
Yeah, there's a great question from our fabulous Lovehoney resident sexpert Annabelle Knight. She'd like to ask you. So she says, "I love seeing people glow when they talk about the best bits, most enjoyable, most fulfilling parts of their jobs." And you're obviously doing that. What's the most fulfilling part of your job, would you say?
Mine, by far, as someone that's worked as a Silicon Valley dating coach and a consultant for various apps, is helping people find a person that they really love. And it's happened several times. I used to work for the Inner Circle, and we had a baby wall there, and if ever we got to the point where, and it did happen quite frequently, by the time that I'd been there a couple of years, we had a sizable baby wall, an engagement wall. By the time you get that email from that person that just says thank you so much, for basically changing my life and giving them the greatest gift, which is love, in a way. Well, I'm getting a bit egotistical about it. It's not me doing it, is it? I'm just doing the introduction. But being involved in that process, there's nothing I'd rather do on earth, honestly.
Isn't that brilliant? This is from Natalie. What's your favourite sex toy?
Ooh, that is a really good question. What is my favourite sex toy? I love a paddle, because obviously harking back to my old dom days, the paddle is just so versatile. You can stroke somebody with it if it's kind of velvet and leather and different fabrics on either side. You can threaten somebody with it. You can obviously give them a really erotic spanking, and an erotic spanking, for the record, is something where you start really slow and you build up the heat. So the aim isn't to kind of terrify someone or really shock them. It's to kind of build up the heat, because with the heat comes the endorphins, comes the pleasure in that whole genital region. So that's the trick to a good spanking.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a slow art, and I was taught it by another dominatrix, and then I passed my craft on to other people.
That's so interesting, because you'd always kind of think it's either there was like an influential, back to Jacob Rees-Mogg, there was like an influential nanny at the beginning of life, so your fantasies are kind of linked to the first time you were aroused, or it's whatever you get off, or if you like corporal punishment.
Sure.
It's an actual endorphin. Yeah,
but there is a psychological component to it, but in BDSM in general, the reason people like being hit, apart from if they have a kind of fantasy about it, is because you're getting a rush of endorphins. So it's the endorphins that would rush to save your body if you were getting, actually injured, but you get them anyway. So actually it's all about it's basically sexual extreme sport. It's no different to doing something like snowboarding or skiing, I'd say. So it's a bit of a better way to think about it.
Have you been banned from snowboarding resorts?
I am absolutely appalling. To say that I used to be a dominatrix, you would have no clue that I'm absolutely terrified on a pair of skis or a snowboard. So something doesn't carry over, unfortunately.
Here's another question, an anonymous attendee. I'm single and wondering how I can date as we move out of COVID. How do you see dating changing post-COVID? It's a brilliant question.
That's a really good question. I think, well, I actually think people are taking dating more seriously. So I think the amount of time wasted that we had on dating apps is actually dwindling, because I think a lot of people have kind of got their emotional house in order. They've sort of said, actually, what matters? Well, to me, I do want to find somebody. I would like a partnership, you know, of whatever kind of length or type that is, you know, with whatever gender. So I think we'll see more people being more serious. I think we're going to see a slight uptick in people moving in together and a slight uptick in marriages. We're obviously going to have a marriage boom next year, but that's really all the weddings that were cancelled this year carrying over. But I think over the next couple of years, we're going to see more and more relationships. So I think it's actually a really, really good time to meet someone. In terms of what you should be doing in a kind of COVID dynamic, it's really just about looking after your health, really watching to see if you have symptoms. Otherwise, you know, go ahead. Don't put your life on hold because of this virus.
There's another brilliant answer. There's another a question from an anonymous attendee. I'm in a fairly new relationship, and because of COVID, I'm unable to see him at the moment. How do you advise we introduce toys from a distance?
Oh, wonderful one. This is the perfectly placed. So, you know, you kind of obviously want to spend time with each other, kind of, you know, separated by COVID. The best thing to do I would recommend, if you both know that you want to introduce toys, go and buy a toy for each other, and then maybe kind of the way to introduce it, because you're going to have to use it on yourself but online obviously, is to kind of sext about it and sort of describe what you've got and what you're going to do to yourself and what you would do to them and what you'll do to them eventually when you get to actually put it on them. Or the other thing you could do is buy it for them and send it to their house, so they get your purchase and then they have to pledge themselves with the things that you choose for them. So that's a really good way of it being a bit more personal. And then, you know, obviously just set up a really good Skype session or whatever video platform you use, and make sure you're not on your work computer, obviously. And
honestly,
you know,
that cracks me up, the thought of someone doing that. It's just too brilliant. Don't mind me. It's just hilarious. What's wrong with people?
I know, it's just habit. It's just habit. All the boundaries are blurred around our lives, and people just forget where stuff belongs.
Yeah. Do you know, my favourite kind of there's one more question, but I quickly say this. My favourite thing that people have said about the virus, and you know, and it's hideous. It's just it's an awful thing, of course, for everyone affected, and we're all affected in many different ways. Is that it's kind of a reset.
Sure.
And that's a kind of nice positive to get from it. And I guess it is in kind of relationships, love, dating, and sex as well.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely is. It's a chance to change any of your patterns that you've had before. You know, you don't have to go to a therapist to change your behaviour in relationships. You can do some self-reflection. And it also, there's something about having to be maybe a little bit chased for a while that can be really good as a kind of cleanse to like figure out what you're going to be doing going forward, what kind of sex you would really like to have, what kind of person you would really like to have it with. So there's something to be said for having that kind of time out imposed on us, you know, because some people are quite compulsive around sex and might have had, you know, times where it's very easy with the kind of dating app culture that we have to find another date every single night or multiple dates in an evening and go to bed with somebody different every single time. And, you know, obviously the COVID advice is that we need to limit contact with people or be choosy about who we give it our time with. And so actually by taking that time out and taking stock a little bit, you're actually doing the right thing by COVID and doing a good thing for yourself.
Yeah. Here's two final questions. So you've kind of answered this, but maybe specifically because it's FaceTime, but another anonymous attendee asks, what's the best toys for FaceTime sex?
Best toys for FaceTime sex. Okay, well, something that you can see, this is going to sound really strange, but obviously some toys are more discreet looking than others. And for maximum effect to arouse the other person that's on the call with you, you want something that's kind of discernibly what it makes out to be. So for example, a really good vibrator that you can see the length and the girth and the shape of is going to be really good to watch on a camera. A male masturbator, again, is pretty good toy because it's like really obvious what it is. So that is what I would say. Go for things that have a really good outline shape because you're not going to be able to see the detail on a video call.
Yeah, it's really like practical.
Is it? Well, it's what porn does, you know. Everything in porn is about the outlines of things. So you've got to apply that kind of principle. What would show up in a porn film? What will show up in your call?
Yeah, so funny. Do we have to have the music? Do we have to do the 70s music?
I would avoid the 70s music at all costs.
So here's a question. Set Jarvis, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. I'm in a polyamorous relationship, and we've been finding it really difficult during COVID, especially that we have to keep our relationship secret from family members, etc. Ket, how would you advise us to have sex safely during COVID?
Yeah, again, it's a really, really tricky one. And especially if you're polyamorous, and I'm presuming there's multiple partners, so you're probably going to have to choose about how many people you have in your bubble, and this rule of six nonsense does come into play. So yeah, that must be actually quite stressful if you're trying to juggle that with family demands as well. I think the most important thing to do is, there are some basic physical principles. So things like having a shower before sex, hand washing before you're holding hands with somebody, do wear a mask, especially if it's someone new, if you can bear it, or the knickers. Avoid rimming. If you're doing a blowjob, use a condom. Do lots of, if you're female, get all your pleasure, get all your cunnilingus, because that's not COVID dangerous in any way, shape or form, unless your head's too close to somebody, of course. And I think the main thing is to really rely on tech, because that's where you're going to have the most pleasure. Get some sex toys, treat each other to nice things, get some lingerie if that's what you like, to kind of show each other, and get back to words, get really good at sexting, get really good at phone sex, get really good at video sex. These things are all free as well, apart from your internet connection. So in the 6 months the long winter that we've got ahead, these things are going to keep you warm.
So the eat out to help out.
Eat out, exactly. Eat out to help out is a brilliant slogan, and somebody else should have put that on a t-shirt with a picture. I'm sure somebody's probably done it, right? I mean, Lovehoney can have that one. Lovehoney can have that one.
Lovehoney. Look what Nikki's doing. Nikki, what's next for you?
What is next for me? Well, I am writing a new book about sex and mental health.
Are you?
Yes, I am. It's a bit of a kind of secret and beginning project at the minute, so I'm not really in a position to tell you any more about it. But if you watch my Instagram, I'm going to start teasing about it over the next few months. So that is the thing that I will be on. And also, I have a brilliant podcast called Bisexual Brunch, which is out now. I present that with two co-hosts. We're all bisexual. They're two bisexual guys. I'm bisexual girl, and we just go to town. Originally, we were going to be literally having brunch with each other, so we don't get to do the brunch part, but we do record it at all times of the day, sometimes at brunch, and we get some brilliant people on. We talk to actors, we're talking to celebrities, we're talking to academics, all kinds of people, all about what it is to be bi in the 21st century.
And was it just Bi Visibility Week?
It was Bi Visibility Day yesterday. It's still the week now, because I'm doing something at the British Library tomorrow, all about being bi. So yeah, it's a great week to be bi. There's loads going on. There's loads of conversations. There's loads of brilliant free events online. It's a really good chance to check in with yourself, see how you're feeling about your identity, and just celebrate who you are.
Yeah. Have you read any of those books behind you?
I've read all of them. Actually, a load of them are mine. There's Spanish and Italian versions of my book. So I was trying to teach myself languages by reading my own book. Again, extreme ridiculous project, really. But I just learned the kind of words for private parts out of them.
I bet you did.
That was the most useful thing to do.
What's the worst word you've heard for a private part?
Am I allowed to say it? Oh my gosh.
Oh no. What if it's naughty? I'll tell you mine. So
go on, you tell me. I'll gauge your tone if you tell me.
Okay, yours. Yeah, it's lovely. My friend had a daughter, and when the daughter was a certain age, the daughter wanted to know what to call bits, and my friend didn't want to call it what it is, so she obviously gave it this name. And the reason we found out what this name was her daughter, and I don't think it was at Christmas, was one day standing in front of us, and she went, "Mummy, do you like my legs? Mummy, do you like my knees? Mummy, do you like my thighs? Mummy, do you like my satsuma?" That's Christmas ruined.
But then again, on the other hand, it's a good code word, and it's not going to get you in trouble in the playground, probably.
Probably.
Well, actually, this is interesting. When I was little, all the children in the hospital, regardless of their gender, the nurses said they had a tail. So what? I was brought up with the word tail for my vagina my vulva when I was a little girl, and it's really strange when I think about it. And I'm definitely not teaching my children it.
That's so funny.
But at least it was gender neutral. I mean, I guess it was like equivalent. So at least there was that.
Yeah. Let's go with that. Let's stick with that. It's been so lovely chatting with you. Lovely to meet you.
Likewise, baby.
Good luck with your book. It sounds amazing.
Thank you.
And have fun with your Lovehoney products. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Oh, Nikki, we have such great guests. We're so lucky.